Hello, everyone. My name is Shayantani Ghosh, and I'm joining you all today from Hyderabad in South India. I'm so happy to welcome all of you today on behalf of the Work That Reconnects Network. We we are so grateful that you can join us for the Webinars and Conversation Cafe program, where we are providing a wide range of rich, educational, and supportive online events for our global Work That Reconnects community, and now even larger. Our intention is to strengthen the web of the community while reaching beyond its current edges to weave deeper connections with others who are contributing to the great turning in diverse and complementary ways. Today, we are so excited to be in partnership with Parallax Press, New Society Publishers, and Shambhala Publications. This event is a collaboration between all of us to honor the literary legacy of our beloved root teacher, Joanna Macy. This event is also even more special because we are fundraising to support the creation of the audiobook of her memoirs, Widening Circles. The book will be produced and distributed by New Society Publishers and narrated by our longtime friend, Leilani Navar, to whom I'm so delighted to introduce you now. She will be the moderator of today's event. Leilani is a mother, an acupuncturist, a dream worker, and a longtime facilitator of the Work That Reconnects. She hosts the podcast Turning Season, a series of conversations with people around the world who are rising to their own roles in this adventure of our time. Leilani is an ongoing study and practice in multiple lineages of wisdom for the well being of the landscape of the body and the body of the earth. Welcome, Leilani. We are so happy to be with you today.
Thank you so much, Shayantani. Thank you for the introduction and for gathering us all here. Thank you, Joe. And thank you all for being here. I'm really happy to be with all of you. We have something very special in common, which is great love and appreciation for Joanna Macy and her work. And to start our time together today, I'll guide us in an opening meditation inspired by the way Joanna would lead this very often in Work That Reconnects workshops, and she called it breathing through. So I'll invite you to get comfortable and close your eyes if you like, if that feels good to you. Settling into wherever you're sitting, upright or leaning back, and begin to notice the sensations of your breath. There's no need to breathe in any special way, just notice the sensations of your breath coming in and your breath flowing out. You might notice that your breath comes in and flows out on its own. You don't have to decide to breathe. It's almost as though you are being breathed by life, as all of us here together are being breathed, as all of life inhales and exhales around us in our home of Earth. And now you can envision your breath as a stream or a ribbon of air and see it coming in through your nose and traveling down through your trachea and your lungs. And allow that ribbon of air to pass through your heart before you breathe it back out again into this vast breathing web of life. And as that ribbon of air continues to flow, and feel your connection, your physical connection points with the earth, where gravity holds you close, always drawing you in close to the center of the earth. You might feel your roots growing down and send your greetings and your thanks to the land that holds you in this moment. Physically connected with one another through this earth that we share and through this air that we're breathing. You can bring your attention again to that ribbon of air, feeling it flow through your nose, your trachea, your lungs, and touching your heart before it flows back out again. And now open your awareness to some suffering that you know about, maybe that you've felt or seen or heard about recently. Allow that to come into your awareness, and you can breathe it in like little granules on this ribbon of air. Breathe that in and let it flow down through your trachea and lungs to your heart, to make contact with your heart before you breathe it back out again into this vast web of life. Breathe in that pain, allow it to touch your heart, and return it to the healing intelligence, the resourcefulness of this web we all share. Joanna would quote a Buddhist saint saying, "Let all sorrows ripen in me. Let these sorrows come through our hearts, be touched by our caring." And always be breathed back into this web of interbeing of which we are all a part together, and of which Joanna's teachings and wisdom and her legacy continue to be a part, continuing in all of us. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes again. And we can take a moment to see each other. Those who have their cameras on, if you'd like to take a moment to look through that gallery view and see all these beautiful companions we have this morning or afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Thank you for practicing that with me, and thank you for being here. We are, as I mentioned, sharing in common this love of Joanna and this care for her legacy, and we're especially celebrating today everything that she wrote down and published. We're so blessed to have so much written work from Joanna. And this work is stewarded by several publishers. And today, as Shayantani mentioned, we have New Society publishers, Parallax Press, and Shambhala, represented by our guest authors. And I will share with you a little bit about each of these publishers and then introduce our panelists, and we'll get started with our conversation. the publishers. Let me pull this out for us. Okay, so we have Parallax Press. Parallax is a nonprofit publishing house founded by Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh and dedicated to the art of mindful living and engaged Buddhism. Since 1986, they have published transformative works that bridge inner practice with social and ecological action, inspiring a more compassionate and sustainable world. As one of Joanna Macy's longtime publishers, Parallax shares her vision of awakening to interbeing and cultivating collective healing through awareness and action. And from Parallax today, we have with us Joe Confino and Kazu Haga. New Society Publishers is an activist, solutions-oriented publishing house that has championed sustainability and social justice for over 40 years. New Society is a certified B Corporation and a carbon neutral company. They publish on 100% post-consumer recycled paper and are offering practical tools for all of us thinkers and doers working toward ecological and cultural regeneration. They are proud to have published many of Joanna Macy's seminal works, reflecting their shared commitment to transforming despair into action and building a just, life-sustaining world. And from New Society, we have with us Molly Young-Brown and Judith Plant. And Shambhala Publications is devoted to sharing wisdom that supports inner transformation and the cultivation of a compassionate, contemplative society. For over 50 years, they've published works spanning Buddhist, Taoist, and other spiritual traditions, along with contemporary explorations of mindfulness, psychology, and embodied well-being. As the publisher of World as Lover, World as Self, and other of Joanna Macy's writings, including A Wild Love for the World, of which Stephanie Kaza is the editor, our author here today from Shambhala. Shambhala carries forward her legacy of awakening through compassion and courageous engagement with our world. And these publishers are generously celebrating this event of Joanna Macy's literary legacy with 50% discounts on select books of Joanna's, which is amazing. So those discount codes will be shared in the chat. I think those are going to pop up for you, but all three publishers are offering 50% off certain titles. And those codes will, there they are. Okay. Perfect. Thank you, Shai. All right. And let me introduce our authors, and then I will speak just a little bit about the audiobook, the project of publishing an audiobook of Joanna's memoir, and then we'll begin to hear from our authors. So we have with us, perfect. We have with us Molly Young-Brown. I don't know if you want to maybe wave, Molly. Here's Molly. Molly integrates the work that reconnects eco-psychology and psychosynthesis in her teaching, writing, and mentoring. She is the co-author with Joanna Macy of Coming Back to Life, This Treasure. And she continues to deepen and expand this body of work from her home in Mount Shasta, California. Thanks for being here, Molly. And Judith Plant, I'll introduce. Judith representing New Society Publishers. Judith is a writer, ecofeminist, and publisher who, together with her husband Kip, has guided New Society Publishers for decades. Through her publishing and personal collaborations with Joanna Macy, Judith has helped bring key works of the Work That Reconnects into the world, including Widening Circles. I know you've really supported keeping Joanna's memoir available for all of us. Thank you, Judith.
Most welcome. Hello.
And Stephanie Kaza. Stephanie, oh, here she is. Stephanie is Professor Emerita of Environmental Studies at the University of Vermont and a leading voice in Buddhism and ecology. Her most recent book, Green Buddhism, invites compassionate action and mindful engagement in uncertain times. Thank you, Stephanie. Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
And we are so happy to have with us Kazu Haga. Let's see, here he is. Kazu is a trainer in nonviolence and restorative justice whose work spans movements, schools, and prisons, fostering healing, accountability, and community transformation. Thank you so much for being here, Kazu.
Thank you.
And last but not least, we have Joe Confino from Parallax Press. And he is a journalist, a mindfulness practitioner, and facilitator exploring compassionate leadership and the meeting place of inner transformation with social and environmental change.
Hi,
Joe is
everyone.
there if you want to say hello. We can't see you, Joe, but
Oh. Hello, everyone.
thank you for being here with us, Joe. All right, so much more to come from these 5 authors. I'll take a moment to tell you all about the Widening Circles audiobook project. We are fundraising for the production of this audiobook to help Joanna's story reach more people. I love her memoir. I'm sure anybody who's read it feels that way as well. It's stunning, really, and touched me in so many ways. I read a lot of it out loud to my mom on a road trip, and she said, "You should make an audiobook of this." And as I was reading it, I think we were right about there when she suggested that. Joanna was talking about her synthesis of Buddhism and systems theory and her decision to dive deep in those fields of study. And I was at the time thinking deeply about what direction I was going to go in my work. And, that's questions so many of us wrestle with continuously of like, what's going to really help in this moment in this world. And I felt perfectly clear that one thing that would definitely be of benefit was more people hearing Joanna's story. So I got excited about that, and I had a chance on a visit with Joanna, to ask her what she thought about the audiobook idea. And so she had me read the first chapter out loud to her, which is a beautiful chapter about her visits to her grandparents' farm during the summers throughout her childhood and teen years. I had to read that to her in her living room, and she loved the idea, got excited about the audiobook, and her excitement made me 100% commit to making this happen. I'm really grateful to New Society and to the Work That Reconnects Network for, being on board with that too, and working to make that happen, and to all of you who have donated to contribute to the funds to produce that. I think we have another link coming. Here it is. It's in the chat. A link if you would like to support the production of the audiobook. You can donate there to the production. Also, as a way of transitioning into our conversation about her writing, I'm going to read you a little excerpt from her memoir. This is when Joanna was a young woman of 46. She'd already had many adventures, which are in the first 150 pages. And this is a little bit about when she first returned to India, the first return after she and her family had lived there. 10 years earlier, she'd gone to graduate school, studied and written about systems theory and Buddhist teachings on causality. And I think this gives us a glimpse into what guided her from then on, probably before then as well. Coming straight from 4 years of graduate school, I had much to recount. I was excited by my studies of the Dharma, and since Kamchul Rinpoche had initially inspired me on the path, I was eager for him to know what a good scholar I was becoming. I told him how I was learning Pali so I could read the ancient scriptures in the original, and how I was discovering new depths of meaning in the Buddha's teaching of dependent co-arising. "Oh, Rinpoche, now I'm understanding so much." "Ah," he breathed, smiling on me affectionately with infinite patience. When I paused, after rattling on some more, he simply asked, "Does this help you to increase in compassion?" He seemed genuinely interested to know, but I was tongue-tied. His great moon of a face had kept beaming at me so I would not feel chastised as he explained, "It does not really matter how many things you know, so long as you fully experience what you do know. It seems you have learned a great deal about the Dharma. Now, if you let it penetrate, it can change you totally." He said, "It is not your getting knowledge or even enlightenment that matters. It is your wanting it for the sake of all beings." And he spoke to me of that rarest and most precious thing of all, motivation. the motivation to relieve the suffering of others, which is called bodhicitta. Without it, all striving and all uses of the intellect are not worth much. But with it, everything self-realizes. You're already home. So with that, I would love to turn to our authors. Each of you, I see so many hearts. That's beautiful. That's how I feel reading that. Yeah, each of you expressing that bodhicitta in your own unique and wonderful ways. So I'd like to begin by inviting each of you to share a little bit about the influence that Joanna Macy has had on you. Molly, would you be open to beginning for us?
Certainly will. Certainly will. Joanna's been a major presence in my life for the last 35 years, which is more than half of my adult life. And so it's really hard to sort out all the influences that she had, shaped by her teaching, her writing, and her thinking, and her friendship. Probably the most profound influence came from writing together the two editions of Coming Back to Life. And her capacity to speak and write so eloquently and poetically, and yet explaining really complex concepts that I could understand when I may never have understood them before, like karma. Her explanation of karma and world is lover, world is self is like, oh, that's what karma is. It was really, really amazing. And yet at the same time, her writing is so eloquent, poetic, beautiful. So writing really can shape the way we see ourselves and our world and motivate us to act on its behalf. Really can, because she shows me that. She shows me that. So we had so much fun writing together, playing together, coming up with just the right way to express an idea or a feeling or a vision. And this strengthened my confidence in my own writing and is inspiring me, challenging me really to continue writing to help further the great turning. So her teachings are central to my thinking and worldview. And so it's difficult for me to say, this idea or that idea, because it's all just part of the soup, the philosophical soup I swim in, and many of the other people on this screen also swim in. So forever grateful for Joanna's presence in my life.
Thank you, Molly. Judith, how about you? Oh, unmute for us. We can't hear you. Shai or Joe, there we go.
There we go. I feel part of that soup too, Molly. But I didn't have the pleasure of knowing Joanna as intimately as you must have. And I am really in awe of that. Joanna's work, when I thought about it and I thought about it and I thought, what was the one thing? And I couldn't come up with it. It was like Joanna's intelligence and her thoughtfulness, her scholarly work filled in the gaps for me of my own gut feelings. So she put structure around what I felt in my heart, which was my own longing for community. And I understand now why I feel that way is because of our connection with all of life, which I learned from Joanna way back in the 1980s with her work with John Seed. And then I realized that what was really important to me and what was pivotal was the work that she and John and Arness did in a little book called Thinking Like a Mountain towards a Council of All Beings. And we actually practiced this at a North American Bioregional Congress. So in the midst of the Congress, there's hundreds of people, and we had other folks representing all the other species. So someone spoke for the winged one, someone spoke for the fish, and I'd never seen anything like this. So I really have to say I was enmeshed in humans, and and I didn't really get the connection and the importance of that connection as we try to come to terms with the ecosystems that we actually live in and who we actually are as a species on this planet. So that was pivotal for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Yeah. Stephanie.
Hello, everyone. I greet you from Portland, Oregon, the confluence of the Willamette and Columbia Rivers and the native lands of the Multnomah, Clackamas, Clawiwalla, and Cascades bands of Chinookan peoples and the Tualatin Band of Kalapuya, and the home of salmon, beaver, bear, and raven. I just want you to know where I am and just beginning to be in the middle of an atmospheric river. In the last few years, I worked closely with Joanna to refine her words and bring the words of others to her in the tribute volume, Wild Love for the World, published by Shambhala in 2020. Meeting in her living room month after month, we reviewed the various chapter contributions, considered carefully what would make a strong and engaging book. She was, as Molly said, a very thoughtful partner in the work, eager to think creatively with us as the contents emerged and found shape around her key teaching themes. Later, as we work to revise and expand the 30th anniversary edition of World is Lover, World is Self, and please get that edition. It's the best of the three. We were forced by the pandemic to do much of the editing on Zoom to accommodate Joanna's declining vision and hearing loss through our laptop screens. It was a challenge. But even there, throughout the page-by-page process, I was impressed with Joanna's skill in wordsmithing and her sense that each word carried weight and should be chosen carefully. I sensed her Buddhist commitment to the practice of right speech and her integrity in speaking in her own true, authentic voice. The quality of Joanna's voice is deeply familiar to me, as for many of you, a quite intimate knowing from these many sessions in her kitchen or living room. And that powerful voice had a deep impact on me, influencing my teaching and thinking for over 3 decades. I hear it as a voice of agency and meaning-making, of encouragement, of love and resistance, a voice of transmission, a call for awakening. Now, as a teacher myself, I studied Joanna's voice. I wanted to know how she used it to get people's attention, to keep them involved, to lead them purposefully to a place of learning. Her lectures on systems theory and other topics were tight and well prepared, but her strong suit was a deep, intuitive, and trusting sense of how to create a fertile learning space. She used that voice to guide others in collaborative settings, to bring forward each other's voices. But it was her voice that reached forward to hold your attention, that invited relationship, that offered curiosity, always seeking the right words to express the heart of the matter. So it's my hope and belief that Joanna's powerful voice will continue to impact people for many years, both through her recorded speeches and, of course, through the books we're celebrating today of her insightful words. May they be with us well into the future.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Hear, hear. Kazu, would you like to share?
Yeah, thank you so much, Leilani, and thank you, everyone. Yeah, so I had the privilege of meeting Joanna in person before I had read anything that she had written. It was many years ago. She was doing a 7-day workshop on the Work That Reconnects in Northern California. And my friend Arthur Romano and I were invited to facilitate just a 3-hour session on Kingian nonviolence, which is the philosophy of Dr. Martin Luther King that I kind of grew up through. And it was actually, I had just gotten certified as a Kingian trainer. So it was my first time ever facilitating a Kingian nonviolence workshop. And I was just really amazed that, Joanna, I had never met, I didn't really know much about her at the time, but as an elder who was very well established and a respected leader, would give us 3 hours in a workshop that she was facilitating to two young people that she had never met. Just the trust and the faith that she had instilled in me for facilitating the first time. So
Computer.
it's really beautiful. And then a year or so later, I ended up attending a 6-month training of trainers for BIPOC, for people of color, in the Work That Reconnects. And it was led by Joanna, but it was also co-led by a local Indigenous elder named Pat St. Ange. And she brought in Pat to co-facilitate with her because she was very clear that, look, I understand that there's some ways in which the Work That Reconnects is spreading throughout the world that doesn't always connect with communities of color. And so I'm doing a training of trainers for people of color to take on the Work That Reconnects and take it into their communities. And again, I noticed this just the incredible humility of an elder who was so well established to be able to say, hey, there's some piece of this work that I don't understand. You all need to help me, and to take it into your own communities. And so I just was so appreciative of that humility. And I should also share that the first time that I attended that workshop, 15 years ago, that first Work That Reconnects workshop, it was the first time I ever cried in a workshop space. Like, I didn't know that that's a thing that people did. I was raised as a man and a cis body, and I wasn't someone that cried a lot. And it was during the Seven Generations activity where I was embodying someone from 200 years ago, speaking to an ancestor, and just having for the first time this embodied sense of how beautiful the world could look like 200 years from now, and knowing that the grief that actually comes with the possibility of beauty is such a powerful tool that we all need access to. So I think Joanna taught me how to be whole and how to accept all of who I am. And I'll also just share very briefly as I wrap up here that I'm now a resident of the Canticle Farm community, which is a community of about 40 people that is grounded in largely in Joanna's work. And yeah, it's her influence in this community has really shown me what it means to live in a village and to remind me what it means to be human. So I'll always be grateful for that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Kazu. And Joe.
Yeah, hi everyone. I fell in love with Joanna the first time I met her, in the same way I fell in love with Jane Goodall the first time I met her. And if I stop to think, what did I fall in love with? And I think I felt in love with someone who was truly themselves, the unadorned, perfect, fearless, compassionate, determined, and just with a deep, resonant voice that spoke truth to me. And way before I met her, I had been I held sort of Active Hope as a book that was always by my side. And when I was feeling lost, that book became my touchstone. And I was working at The Guardian, and I invited Joanna to come and do a day's workshop there. And the work she did was just so connecting. I think it just helped everyone just connect to something deep within themselves. And by going deep within, to be able to touch the world that they were part of. And then I set up a podcast with the abbot of Plum Village, where I now live, called The Way Out Is In, and Joanna did 2 episodes with us. And my word, as someone said, the poetry, the resonance, the depth, the wisdom. And so I think, like Jane Goodall, what did she mean to me? She's a refuge, and she continues just to be a refuge, a place where I can place my faith and my trust, and to know that all is well. And she didn't need to really say very much. She's, like Thich Nhat Hanh presented for me, it's about presence. And when people have a presence, then we feel safe and we feel we can be fully ourselves. And the only way we can achieve that is to be in the refuge of someone who has already achieved that. So I love her dearly.
Thank you, Joe. And thank you for those episodes with her. They are beautiful. Well, let's go around again. Thank you all for sharing about that, how she's influenced you personally. And I would like to invite any of you who would like to read a passage of her writing, also to let us go a little deeper into what has touched you about her words and her work. Do you all have a passage you want to read? Give me a little, yeah. Okay, we can start with Molly. Molly, would you like to read for us and then share a little bit about why you love this passage?
Yeah. Well, I've only read Widening Circles once, I think. I may have gone back and read it again, parts of it again, but I always remember the ending. And so I wanted to share the ending. They are, she and Fran, her husband, are at Bodh Gaya, which is where the Bodhi tree is, where Buddha found his enlightenment. And there's a circuit you can take, a walking circuit, and they've taken this now over several days, and they've come to the end. And Rainier Maria Rilke said, "I circle around God." And she says, well, whatever that meant to Rilke, the widening circles of my life had not had as their center the big Papa God my preacher forebears. I walked out of that belief when I was 20. What authority now holds me in orbit? The soft rain has ceased. Above the Bodhi tree, the moon appears, lopsided, almost full. And I'm thinking, no, it's not Fran around whom I circle, nor my children or my grandchildren. It's not any of these wonderful teachers I've had. I'm paraphrasing a little bit here. Is it my love for them all that holds me in orbit? Or is it the fate awaiting my planet's people in this harsh, momentous time? The tall Tibetan monk strides by me, his lined face catching the lamplight. And there sits a young Japanese woman, eyes closed, still as a stone, and the Sri Lanka bhikkhu rearranging his robe, his sheaf of texts. For 10 days their devotions have enriched my own. I want to say goodbye to them, to tell them that tomorrow I will be gone, but I don't. I only thank them silently for their company. Just the tenderness of that moment and the way she describes it, I'm there with her. And having known both Fran and Joanna and the preciousness of their relationship, I just feel that that's what our love is, what brings us into orbit and keeps us working together for, the words life-sustaining and interconnected and all those words, but it's a felt sense of all that she conveys in this. So I'm really looking forward to, Liana, your translation.
Thank you, Molly.
Not translation, your
Narration.
narration.
It's a kind
Thank
of
you.
a translation into,
It
into
is.
audible form. Yeah. Thank you, Molly. Judith, would you like to read a passage? Oh, you're muted again.
Sorry. Also from Widening Circles, a book that I love. Possibly because I love Joanna too. And this is a poem. And I did not know what to pick. And I have to say, when I was preparing for this event, I found myself in despair. And I find this poem. Prayers for 1,000 years, from a book, Prayers for 1,000 Years. You live inside us, beings of the future. In the spiral ribbons of our cells, you are here. In our rage for the burning forests, the poison fields, the oil-drowned seals, you are here. You beat in our hearts through late-night meetings. You accompany us to clear cuts and toxic dumps and the halls of the lawmakers. It is you who drive our dogged labors to save what is left. Oh, you who will walk this earth when we are gone, stir us awake. Behold through our eyes the beauty of this world. Let us feel your breath in our lungs, your cry in our throat. Let us see you in the poor, the homeless, the sick. Haunt us with your hunger, hound us with your claims that we may honor the life that links us. You have as yet no faces we can see, no names we can say, but we need only hold you in our mind and you teach us patience. You attune us to measures of time where healing can happen, where soil and
We know there's a storm where Judith is, so I'm not sure if how her connection is going to hold. We'll just give her a moment here. It looks like we might have lost her for now, but I don't know about all of you, but I definitely heard the voices of those future beings there through Joanna's words. So thank you to Judith. Hopefully we'll have her back shortly. Stephanie, I'll pass it to you.
I'm going to read the closing from the acknowledgments for World as Lover, World as Self. As I reread and rethought the foundations of my work, I fell in love with our world over and over again. Throughout this understanding, I have felt renewed gratitude and respect for the Buddha Dharma and for the many teachers who transmitted and shared it generously with me. Over all these years, the Dharma to me is, as Buddhaghosa described, like a tough and verdant vine, beautiful wherever you pick it up, beautiful at the roots, beautiful in the tendrils, beautiful in the flowers. All this feeds my ever-increasing wonder and reverence for the great teacher Gautama Buddha and all who have followed in his footsteps. May these teachings illumine for us the way ahead. I chose this passage because perhaps the strongest influence for me is Joanna's root understanding of Buddhist principles that point to liberation from suffering. With these were underlying everything she wrote and said, and not always obviously, sometimes more as a small b Buddhist. We know her great empathic heart and how she resonated with the earth's suffering and excluded nothing from consideration. And she invited us to awaken to this suffering through wisdom and compassion. Her genius and quite original framing of core Buddhist principles brought forth new words in her writing and speaking. She asked us to ponder the idea of the ecological self. That is not a term you'll find in the Pali Canon, but it represents this understanding of mutual causality and all its non-dual, non-linear, holonic, profound implications. Her group exercises offered pathways to experiencing the ecological self, as we know, inviting us to become planetary citizens, liberated from our small ego views of the world. The phrase became a koan, an opportunity for awakening to the wisdom inside of mutual causality, paticca samuppada, which she wrote about in her systems thinking Buddhist comparison study. This was the focus of her, not only her doctoral thesis, but this love stayed with her for this profound truth her whole life. So sharing the teachings of the Buddha Dharma, the verdant vine, Joanna always was asking us to take up the bodhisattva call to compassionate action. And she would speak the prophecy of the Shambhala warrior, as a transmission from the ancient Tibetan Buddhist texts, and then gave us the word ikosattva, one who travels on emotionally perilous terrain, guided by the infinite wellspring of compassion. Now, Joanna was open about her Buddhist sources and what they meant to her as foundations for the work that reconnects, though not everybody who's practicing is a Buddhist, but she was very clear about it. Her Vipassana mindfulness and meditation practices were a part of her daily life, and her fascination with Tibet and Tibetan Buddhism supported a strong Vajra wisdom-seeking orientation for her. So to me, her acknowledgement of the Buddha Dharma as her core intellectual and spiritual source is one of the most important legacies for the modern Western world. Through her written works, she will continue to be known for her groundbreaking efforts to ground eco-activist work in time-tested spiritual practice.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Kazu, would you like to read to us?
Yeah, I actually want to share the beginning words of World is Love, World Itself. So I'll just read a very short section of it. She starts with saying, "We are in a space without a map, with the likelihood of economic collapse and climate catastrophe looming. It feels like we are on shifting ground where old habits and old scenarios no longer apply." And then she offers a teaching from the Buddha Akshobhya, who says, "Do not look away. Do not avert your gaze. Do not turn aside." And this last little bit of "do not look away" reminds me of a conversation I had years ago with my friend Kriti Kanko, who is a part-time climate scientist, part-time Zen priest, part-time climate activist, and is also deeply in the work that reconnects. And she once told me that she oftentimes goes to her scientist friends. And these are people who understand the data of the climate crisis better than anybody. And she sometimes asks them, "Yeah, but how do you feel about this data? How do you feel about this science?" And she said that a lot of them kind of go into a state of panic when she asked that question. And she said, "Don't even ask me that. I can't go there with you." And I think it's really telling that in a lot of activist communities, we are able to look at injustice and have all these like intellectual analysis of the problem and do power mapping and spectrum of allies and have all this intellectual analysis, but we're not actually able to see the suffering. We're not actually able to be with the suffering. And if we only have an intellectual understanding of the crises, then we can only respond with an intellectual response. And honoring the intellect at the expense of the heart is what got us into this mess to begin with, right? And so I think Joanna's teachings of, it's okay to look at the suffering. It's okay to grieve. And she has this other teaching, I forget where it comes from, of, grief is not a weakness. Let it be the measure of our connection to each other, of our interdependence to each other. Right. And so I have really learned from Joanna's work and the work that reconnects that without feeling the grief and without feeling the suffering, that we spend so much of our life, so much of our spiritual energy is focused on suppressing the grief that lives in our body. And all that energy that we spend telling ourselves, everything is fine, I don't need to grieve, I just need to keep chugging forward, it saps us of our creativity and it saps us of our connection to each other. And so I think this teaching that Joanna was always so adamant about of grief is our power, right? It's in our ability to grieve where we also remember that we grieve because we love this earth that we are trying to protect. We love the people and all the life that live on it. Is such an important thing for particularly for activist communities to be able to feel right now.
Thank you, Kazu. And look at the hearts and thumbs up flying here. You really spoke to something that's deeply resonating with so many of us about Joanna's work. Thank you. Joe, do you have a passage you wanted to read today, or?
I do. And the wonderful thing is that the passage is the same one that Kazu picked.
Ah.
And the beauty of this is not to pick another one, but I'm going to read it again because I think one of the things is we have to hear this time and time and time again, because actually we're so defended against our grief and against the truth of what we're seeing that actually we need to hear it again and again because we forget. So, Kazu, I'm here to reiterate everything you've just said, but in a slightly different way and with a slightly different accent, which always helps to have a little bit of diversity. And I'm going to read a slightly longer version. So it's the prologue, and it's called Entering the Bardo. We are in a space without a map. With the likelihood of economic collapse and climate catastrophe looming, it feels like we are on shifting ground, where old habits and old scenarios no longer apply. In Tibetan Buddhism, such a space or gap between known worlds is called a bardo. It is frightening. It is also a place of potential transformation. As you enter the bardo, there facing you is the Buddha Akshobhya. His element is water. He is holding a mirror, for his gift is mirror wisdom, reflecting everything just as it is. And the teaching of Akshobhya's mirror is this: do not look away. Do not avert your gaze. Do not turn aside. This teaching calls for radical attention and total acceptance. And then she finishes the prologue. When we dare to face the cruel social and ecological realities we have become accustomed to, courage is born and powers within us are liberated to reimagine and even perhaps one day rebuild the world. Do not look away. Do not avert your gaze. Do not turn aside. And the reason I love that is because I always tend to read just the first and last pages of books. So this is very helpful that this is on the first page. And the reason I love it, I just wrote an article for Lion's Roar on mirror wisdom, because one of the things for me that from Joanna Macy, but also Thich Nhat Hanh, is first of all, we need to look in the mirror at ourselves, because so many people are feeling the grief of the world or trying to change the world, but not feeling the grief inside and not transforming ourselves. And I think the wisdom of looking in a mirror is to see our own deep pain in ourselves, our own deep suffering, our own sense of loss, our own feeling of not being at home, of being lost. And that it's only when we look in a mirror and find the love within ourselves and find the peace within ourselves that we can then go and help the world. And just to, because Thich Nhat Hanh was a teacher to Joanna Macy, and I once interviewed Thich Nhat Hanh, and I said, you know, what will it take to save the world? And he said, show people a truly happy person. And at the time, I sort of poo-pooed that thing. What's he talking about? And then I saw the truth in that, that when we truly find the happiness in ourselves and show that to the outside world, then the world will change. But if we're just projecting our suffering on the world, then all we do is exacerbate the suffering. So I love that idea of the sort of looking in the mirror at our own suffering and looking in the mirror at the suffering of the world and realizing they are deeply intertwined and that we can't solve one without the other.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for the repetition and also your beautiful reflections afterwards. I'd like to pose another question. I'm not sure if everyone wants to reply to this one, so I'll let our panelists let me know if you want to, but I'm curious to ask if you have any reflections on how we can see the legacy of Joanna's written work in the wider world, in addition to these deep ways that it's touched us all personally that you've shared, in the literary world or in fields of study like eco-psychology, in circles of activists or other communities. Would anybody like to speak to that question, how you're seeing her legacy show up in those circles? Kazu?
I'm happy to start us off anyways. I got involved in activist movements in 1998, in the late 1990s, in the anti-globalization movement. I was really active in a lot of the mass mobilizations that happened in the 1990s and early 2000s. And when I entered those movement spaces, I had just come out of monastery, Buddhist monastery, and it felt like I had to do my spiritual practice over here and then my activist life over here. And when we were doing those mobilizations during those years, nobody sang songs, nobody sat in silence. Like there was none of that. It was really taboo to even think about spirituality, and singing songs was like, oh, you crazy hippies, we need to be and it has been so beautiful over the last 15, 20 years, maybe 15 or so years, to see the re-emergence of song culture in movements, to see so many people who do grief work, see the connection between grief work and activist movements, to see movements like Standing Rock and the movement for Black Lives Matter remember that this is ultimately a spiritual battle first, right? And that we have to be grounded in prayer and ceremony. And that, you know, when I was at Standing Rock, the elders of Standing Rock used to tell us when we would go into town to do those direct actions, there was one elder who was, well, would always say, like, remember when you go to town, you're going to a ceremony. Like you can call it direct action, but ultimately what you're doing is ceremony and ritual. And I feel like all of that, you can see influences of Joanna and many other teachers that always reminded us that this is ceremonial work, right? There are political elements to it, but ultimately it's about reminding ourselves that we belong to each other, that we belong to the earth, that we belong to things that are so much bigger than ourselves as individuals, and about intellect and about politics alone. And so I really see the impact of teachings like Joanna's really coming to life in the last 15 years. And it's so beautiful that I feel like I don't have to like split my life and do spiritual practice over here and activist over here, that I can go to a Work That Reconnects workshop and celebrate all of who I am and all of what I think we need to transform the world right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kazu. Yes, Stephanie.
Well, Joanna trained to be in the academy. She got a PhD, she applied for a position, she was ready to go as a member of a religious studies department, and then her whole life, as we know, turned this other direction. But she often talked to me about that yearning, that wanting to be not just accepted, but, approved, up to the, expectations of the academic world. And I was there in the academic world, sort of secretly uh, feeding her teachings to students. I had a big lecture class of, 200 students in environmental studies, and I would start it every time with a bell. And at first they would titter and they thought it was weird, but then I knew they would come to really like it. And so it settled everybody and it helped us all begin together. And it was that kind of thing. But then I also really supported a kind of renegade series of students teaching students classes, which we even got a course number for eventually. That was one of my great achievements. So students could come up with these courses on activism, eco-psychology, environment and the arts. And it was what they were the most, on fire about. And I can't tell you how many times Joanna Macy readings fit with any one of these, created curricula. So one of the greatest gifts for me was when her teachings had moved out enough into psychology and into religion that I set up a panel at the American Academy of Religion for the section called Religion and Ecology, which is a section that's just really been on fire about environment, climate, etc., and doing beautiful work. And by then, it was not hard to get 4 panelists who could review the new book, A Wild Love for the World, and speak to her legacy in the academy. And that made her so happy. And she got to be a respondent in the academy. And for the panelists, it was just a tiny little chance to thank her in that setting. So I'm glad she got her moment in the spotlight there. She totally deserved it.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yes, Molly.
Well, you originally proposed a question about 200 years from now, imagining what
Oh, we're still
how
gonna get there. We're still
you're
gonna
going to
get
do
there.
that one.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'll
I will,
wait till
we'll
that
do a
one.
quick version of that.
Okay.
Yes.
That's all I was going to say. Okay.
Okay, shall we go there now? Joe, your video is frozen, so I don't know if you would like to say something to this last question.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, just briefly, for me, I think Joanna Macy sort of translating ancient wisdom into modern times is so powerful because of course these teachings, this wisdom is doesn't stop, but it needs to be, for every generation, it needs to be translated in a way that that it's accessible, that people can really understand what that means in their own lives. So I think part of her power is that she's taken this wisdom from the ages, she's incorporated, she's looked at it, she's embodied it, and then she shares it in a way that people can sort of understand. And as you know, I love what Kazu said, because there's so many people who are acting in the world, or want to act in the world, but are feeling lost, are burning out, are feeling overwhelmed, and just do not have the understanding of how to connect this into the spiritual life. So for me, that, you know, and I think Kazu said it probably much better than I'm saying it, but this ability to integrate wisdom into action is just so powerful and so needed. And there's so many people I'm speaking to who are overwhelmed, burnt out, feeling lost, not knowing how to connect to this world anymore, almost feeling that they're losing faith. And I think what Joanna does is she helps keep people's faith, but in a very practical way that people can attach themselves to and connect to and then respond from.
Beautiful. Thank you, Joe. And thank you all. I wish we had endless time. I could do an hour-long conversation with each of you. Thank you so much for those reflections. And I have, as Molly began, one more question for us for this panel portion. And for this, I'll invite you to speak to the heart of it. We'll maybe do, more like 2 minutes per person if it works, so that we save time for our audience members for Q&A. But in the vein of the 7 generations practice that many of us have done in a Work That Reconnects workshop, I invite you to imagine yourself as a writer 200 years from now. All of you have published books. Imagine you are writing 200 years from now, and grant the assumption that there are humans here in 200 years and that they have some cultural memory of our time, some way to know our stories and maybe read our books. So you're a writer 200 years from now, and how has Joanna's legacy touched you? How has it impacted you?
Well, I imagine that 200 years from now, Joanna's writings and teachings will have just filtered out into the social and cultural fabric that most people, they don't even know where it came from. And there may be some pithy quotes of hers floating around, but again, people may not know who spoke them first. And a few scholars will know, certainly, that's true, and they'll continue to read and study her work. But for the most part, her central comments are just part of the way everybody thinks and well, I should say not everyone, but most people think and read and think and about themselves and the world. Wouldn't that be fantastic? Imagine a world where mutual causality, our essential interconnectedness, systems thinking, bodhicitta, the deep love for the world and the commitment to the welfare of all beings is the basis for cultures and societies and economic political systems. That's my vision, and may it be so.
Thank you, Molly. Any other writers visiting from 200 years from now to share with us? Stephanie, yes.
Here I sit, pencil in hand, laptop at the ready, writing about spiritual practice that supports action for the world. I hold this beautiful book in my hand, Mutual Causality in Buddhism and General Systems Theory. The PhD thesis of Joanna Macy, written so long ago, but still brilliant in its analysis. Each paragraph and chapter is a testimony to her care with words and philosophical clarity. Though I am writing in another century, addressing other life-threatening issues and worldviews, Joanna's words reflect teachings and truths that go back for millennia. And as I read, doors open in my mind. I feel her presence. She invites a wider holographic view that calls for wisdom and compassion. At the same time, I pick up Joanna's memoir, Widening Circles, her stories from that long ago 20th century. How fortunate for me and so many others that came after her that we could savor her imaginative guided meditations, so poetically phrased, so evocative to experience. I learned that Joanna came from a family lineage of ministers and preachers, and I sense how she spoke prophetically herself, a skilled speaker, choosing her words carefully. And then I pick up her collected essays, World as Lover, World as Self, and read her vision called The Great Turning. How inspiring. I wonder what she would think of the world, the state of the world today. Another grand adventure in the round of human endeavors on the planet, filled with grief and joy. I think she would not hold back. She would keep speaking, keep writing. Well, dearest Joanna, I'm writing to you now. What a great honor it has been to be moved by your words across these past decades. Fierce Bodhisattva warrior, you summoned us to do the work that is needed. And even now, 200 years later, I feel your words and your presence as a beacon of courage and compassion. Thank you, dear Joanna. Thank you for your words. You've left us a treasure of a lifetime. We stand in your grand footsteps, do our best to walk forward on our own paths, writing the next round of words to awaken compassionate action for our dearly beloved planet. You should know that your words are moving across generations. The future beings are here now, carrying your wisdom. I hear you in my mind speaking of emergence, that whatever the state of our world, something fresh is emerging. Look there. Listen closely.
Oof. Thank you so much, future writer. And Stephanie had me getting choked up there. Thank you. Beautiful.
Thank you, Stephanie. I mentioned at the beginning that the first Work That Reconnects workshop that I did, it was the 7 generations activity where I was the future descendant, and the person I was paired with asked me, what does the world look like 200 years from now? And the first words that came out of my mouth is that it was beautiful. And I started bawling, I started crying. And I think part of why there was so much grief there was because I know how much suffering my ancestors needed to go through to create that beautiful world. And that grief that I felt was actually appreciation for the sacrifices and the suffering, right? And I just had this memory years ago. I was in a sweat lodge um, in Los Angeles, and I had this like deep knowing that, oh, there were ancestors 200 years ago that was sitting in this sweat lodge right here praying for me so that I could be there in this sweat lodge. And I had so much deep appreciation for their prayers that allowed me to be there. And so I really feel like the grief that I felt in that moment as a 200-year descendant was appreciation for the challenges and the sacrifices that we have to make in this moment. And so as I kind of look out at the world today and see the poly crisis and know the difficulties that we're going to have to face, it actually makes it a little bit easier knowing that there will be people 200 years from now appreciating the work that we're doing today. So yeah, I just had that memory of that sweat lodge and had that thought of, yeah, just being appreciated in this moment, you know.
Thank you.
So I said to Leilani before we started that I'm the youngest of 5 children, so I'm used to going last, painful as it is, especially after listening to Molly, Stephanie, and Kazu. But I'll do my best. What came to my mind as you asked the question was something I was taught when I was young, which is that vision is building a bridge across an abyss in order to create a path for others to follow. So I think that in 200 years, we will look back and see how Joanna built a bridge across an abyss and showed us how the world could be. And that writing a book 200 years on, I would be able to see that 200 years beyond that, Joanna would be waiting for me over the side of the next abyss. And 200 years hence, she will be waiting for us over the next abyss. And what that speaks to me of is impermanence and change, but also what stays true. And so what for me is like Joanna's wisdom and message is like looking through an endless sort of kaleidoscope that she will always be ahead of us, whispering to us to cross the next bridge and the next bridge and the next bridge and the next bridge into eternity.
Thank you, Joe. You have me close to tears here too. Beautiful conclusion. Thank you for sharing that image with us, that vision. I'm seeing a note in the chat that Judith is here.
Yes, what happened to me?
Oh,
We must have had a short circuit in the power, because I hope you can hear me now.
we can, yes.
Good. I'm so inspired by the panel. And I think you are all channeling Joanna. Because when I read this assignment to what would I be writing about in 200 years, oh, I thought I was in such despair a few weeks ago because everything I looked at and picked up was falling apart. So at least that's how the world seemed to me. And so I thought, well, there will be no humans in 200 years. This is a foolish assignment. And then I picked up Widening Circles in preparation for this event. And the poem that I read, I hope you all heard it. It reminded me that there are future generations. I don't know, somehow it worked for me. And I found myself able to think about the future and that there was a future. And I will be writing historical fiction to talk about the Great Turning and how we got there. And I think what this means is that Joanna's call to me and to all of us is that we carry on. We find it in ourselves to carry on, one foot in front of the other, and we take on the work that reconnects in our own ways, in our own communities. Yeah, so thank you for your inspiration, each and every one of you, as I try to keep my feet firmly placed in that work.
Thank you, Judith. We do it together, right? We
Yes.
companion each other.
Yes, community.
Yeah. I sure like the idea of historical fiction about our time also. Thank you for that seed.
I'm going to get going on it.
All right. Well, thank you all, each of you, wonderful authors and speakers, for everything you've shared. We're going to have a little transition here. I'll read a poem that Joanna and Anita Barrows translated together from Rilke, and Jen Mizell, who I'm sure is here somewhere amongst these squares of beautiful faces, is going to sing us a song that she wrote about Joanna in these last few months. And then we'll take Q&A. So for the audience members, if you have questions you'd like to ask our panelists, this is a great time to start getting those ready and putting those in the chat. Joe and Shayantani will collect those so that we can ask some questions for our panelists. A really treasured part of Joanna's literary legacy is all her translations of Rilke's poetry and her writing about Rilke. And I'll read to you now from the 9th Duino elegy, Earth, Isn't This What You Want? Earth, isn't this what you want? To arise in us, invisible? Is it not your dream to enter us so wholly there's nothing left outside us to see? What, if not transformation, is your deepest purpose? Earth, my love, I want it too. Believe me, no more of your springtimes are needed to win me over. Even one flower is more than enough. Before I was named, I belonged to you. I see no other law but yours, and I know I can trust the death you will bring. See, I live. On what? Childhood and future are equally present. Sheer abundance of being floods my heart. And if Jen is here, and if Joe, if you're able to spotlight her. Yes, here's Jen Mizell to sing for us. Thank you, Jen. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So as Leilani mentioned, this is a song that I wrote about Joanna as she was passing through the portal. And you'll definitely hear her literary legacy in some lyrics of the song as well. Your spirit. Second. Okay, there we go. Your spirit surrounds us all. Your watercolor tapestry painting the sky. You always had beginner's mind, wisest of elders and a playful child. And when you held your hands in mine, I knew myself to be one of a kind, yet humble as a stone. In the council of all beings, we all had a home. This is your greed returning to the mother of it all. This is your greed remembering. The sky will dance when it hears you call. The sky will dance when it hears you call. The sky will dance when it hears you call. If we could keep you forever, you know we would. But if you have to go now, we'll live our lives the way we know you would, led by compassion and seeking truth. A wild love for the world like you. No prison walls can confine this view, because the great turning lies in you. Your life set our hearts on fire with a wild love for the world. Your mind catalyzed the people with a wild love for the world. with a wild love for the world.
Yeah. Thank you, Jen. So beautiful. Thank you so much for singing for us, Jen. And yes, a lot of little like literary little quote treasures in your lyrics there. You can hear Joanna's words.
Thanks for having me.
Here we are, still ripening until we are real, in the words of Rilke. And with Joanna's teachings companioning us. So let me pull up some questions here. And for this, I'll let Joe maybe spotlight all our panelists again. We can come back together. All right. It's like we're gathering back on the nice comfy couches in the front of the room for our panel. Here we go. Almost all back. All right. So one question I'm seeing here, I'm interested to hear reflections, especially from those of you who wrote with Joanna. You know, as she taught us and as we experience in the Work That Reconnects practices, the world is alive. Her teaching that everything is alive, and that we find that. How can we honor that in the written world? How can we honor that in writing? I think this is partly a question about language and maybe deeper than that too. Does anybody have reflections on that question? Molly and then Judith.
Yeah. Well, what comes to me is to cut loose on our writing when we write, and I'm working to do this myself with not a huge amount of success so far, but to write from our hearts, write from our bodies, move beyond the academic strictures that we've maybe been taught about how to write. And honestly, don't use AI. Write from our souls, our hearts, as she did. One of the things that I always remember about Joanna is when she would teach, maybe she had a few notes, I don't know, but I never saw her looking at them. She would just pour forth. And I think she wrote the same way. Obviously, you go back and edit and all that stuff, but somehow to let the magic flow from within and trust it. Trust it. So that's my
Thanks,
my
Molly.
response.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. How about you, Judith?
That's pretty well what I was going to say too. Speak authentically. Cut the big words out. A friend of mine, actually Elizabeth Sartoris, I don't know if any of you know her work, but she once said to me when I was having this very question with her, struggling with my own work, she said, write it first, as if you're writing to a 12-year-old, for a 12-year-old. Yeah, and that really helps. You can go back and put the big words in later, but the essence of what you're trying to say is there. I think it works. Speak from the heart. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Judith. Yeah, Stephanie.
Well, I think one of the things at the heart of that question was about honoring our relations with other beings in the natural world. And in my writing, I try to hold them as witnesses while I'm writing. So if I'm writing about the miracle of the spider web, that spider is keeping an eye out for, is this just some baloney you're throwing down there that's poetic and imaginative? Or are you really noticing what I do and how long it takes me to do this and how careful I do this and how many hundreds and millions of years it's taken me to get to being such a perfect spider? So really to be as intimate as possible with what's actually going on and what's emerging and what's come before it. It really takes clearing away a bunch of ego crap that's stopping you from being really present. So I really encourage people to work out some kind of centering intention practice or meditation practice before they write to do that clearing away. Not to focus on what you're going to write, but just kind of get over it and then get going.
Thank you, Stephanie. Kazu, yes.
Yeah, I love what Stephanie just shared. It feels like the difference between like writing about the world and writing with the world, and the difference between like thinking about what to write and listening to what we need to write about. And I'm the first line of the Tao Te Ching says that the Tao that can be named is not the true Tao. And it's this understanding that like if we can put something into words, it's actually not the deepest truth. And I think there is some truth to that. And at the same time, like, there's one truth that says the depth of truth can never be expressed through our human intellect and using words and writing. And at the same time, when I hear songs like the song that Jen just sang us and poems and prayers, I feel like those are ways that we use words to point us to a deeper truth. And I feel like that's so much what Joanna's writing was about, right? They're not intellectual writings, even though she has that background. She's capable of thinking in that way, but her writings are prayers. And so, yeah, how can we write in a way that, yeah, like other people have been saying, that the writing is coming through us, and how can we learn to listen? I've been really intentional about how much time I spend on scrolling on social media. And before I became a parent, my partner and I used to spend one night a week just under candlelight. No phones, no computers, not even electricity, just so we can quiet our minds. So we have the capacity to listen. Like oftentimes the voice of emergence, the voice of spirit, they're gentle whispers. If we're so busy with the pace of capitalism and the pace of today's world, we can't listen to the voice that is telling us what we need to write about. That spider doesn't have a very loud voice, right? If you're not really grounded, you can't hear the voice of the spider. So yeah, finding ways to really slow down and quiet ourselves and hear what we need to write rather than trying to figure it out.
Thank you, Kazu. Yes, well said. Joe.
Yeah, just to add one thing, for me, it's a transmission, and it's an energy transmission, and so at one level, it's not just the words; it's what is the energy the words are carrying, and that the energy is what enters us, not just the words. I used to remember Thich Nhat Hanh, if people would fall asleep in his Dharma talks, he'd say, don't wake them up. Whatever they need to learn, it will come as Dharma rain. It will just enter the system. So the words aren't, of course, are important. And as a journalist for 40 years, words are very important, but they're not the most important. There's a transmission in every thought we have, every word we utter, every action. It is a transmission. And so, I think what everyone is saying, the same thing, is when we become a channel for that transmission, then the words don't matter so much.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you all. I want to let the audience know if you have any questions that you would like to ask aloud. You don't have to put them in the chat. You could also raise your hand and address our wonderful panel. If you have a question you want to add, I have another to ask for now, but please chime in, type something in the chat, or raise your hand if you'd like to. This question is about Joanna's spiritual practice, and I think we've heard a lot about that. That's woven into our conversation and woven into her writing. But specifically, if any of you have thoughts on how we see her spiritual practice reflected in her writing. And just, you know, hearkening back to the passage I read from Widening Circles, where she came so excited about her studies of Buddhism. But I guess this question is also about not just that, you know, the way we see the ideas she brought us from her spiritual studies, but her practice. How do we hear that in her voice? Anybody have thoughts on that? Yeah, Stephanie.
Well, as I mentioned, I think Joanna was most influenced by Vipassana traditions and the Tibetan traditions. Every so often she would say to me, "You Zennies, I don't get it. What is this Zen thing?" So that was sort of anathema to her. But from the Tibetans, she got this Vajra passion that was deep in her, and her altar at home had many figures and um, evocative objects. She drew a lot of energy from that, and she also had on her wall paintings by important Tibetan teachers and so on. So she had a sense of sacred objects all around her in her meditation space. But then on the other hand, she taught frequently at Spirit Rock Meditation Center, which is a Vipassana base, and really worked with mindful walking, mindful noting. So I think that in her writing, that came through more, her sense of paying very close attention to words as if each word was a step on a mindful path. So those two traditions, they're kind of unusual the way they were brought together, but the Vipassana path was her Western world. Spirit Rock is a place that was made for Westerners. And Tibet was a kind of exotic thing that she felt so lucky to bump into, but she didn't actually pursue 108,000 prostrations and some of the other, more elaborate practices. But she also had a weekly Dharma group. And I know that meant a lot to her, her Dharma sisters. In fact, it's a little sad to me that she fell trying to get onto her Friday morning session with her Dharma sisters, but I know they were with her in that moment as she laid on the floor. So that's what I would see, just my own guess based on what I saw in her home and where I saw her teach. She didn't really teach in Tibetan centers, but she was really, really welcomed in many of the Western centers.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yes, Molly.
Stephanie, speaking of the Dharma, her weekly Dharma group, I had the incredible privilege, good fortune to participate in that a couple of times when I was working with her on Coming Back to Life, on the second edition of Coming Back to Life. And it was, there were a lot of older friends. They were all, her generation or slightly less than her generation. And it was very simple. It was, they just sat and meditated for, it wasn't even a very long period. I don't know, maybe a half an hour. And then I don't know if there was a reading. There might have been. But then they all gathered around the kitchen table and had tea. So it was just a very simple, grounded practice. And I cherish those memories.
Thanks, Molly. Yes, Kazu.
Yeah, I want to actually pause for a second and say a few words about the word spiritual and how I understand it. Because I oftentimes joke that one of my great spiritual teachers is the astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson. Because when I think he would probably hate that I consider him to be one of my spiritual teachers as a scientist. But when I hear him talk about the cosmos, it fills me with the same like awe at the vastness of our life and our existence and the humility of remembering how small and insignificant I am. And it's beautiful. And it just reminds me of how I'm part of something so much bigger than myself. And so I think spiritual practice to me, like Joanna's teachings and her writing isn't spiritual because she talks about spiritual dogma or religious dogma. but it's spiritual because it fills me with awe about the vastness of the cosmos, about the mystery, about the possibilities, and it reminds me that I am deeply interdependent with all other phenomena, right? And I think it's that, like, you sometimes you read her writings and you just sit there and like, wow. In the same way that when I think about how big the cosmos is and how old the galaxy is, I'm just left with like, wow, just that humility of knowing that I'm part of something so enormous that I can't my intellect alone can't possibly comprehend. Like, to me, that's the one of the ways that the spirit and her spiritual teachings come alive in her readings and in her work.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
One thing just to add is, the reason we've got into the mess we have is because of this idea that we're individuals and separate. And the whole basis I see of spiritual understanding, which Joanna so deeply touched into, is into being, is the fact that there's no separation. And so, I would say that, the core, in a sense, benefit of Joanna's teaching is just to slice through that non-reality, that we're separate, individual, that we need to compete, that we need to fight, and that we need to protect ourselves at all cost, and just to help us see the reality that we are interdependent with everything else, as Kazu says. I just find my job here is just to repeat what Kazu is saying, which I hope I'm not doing too bad a job, Kazu, for you. But that is the spiritual heart of her teaching, the spiritual heart of that deep understanding of interdependent co-arising, etc., etc. And I think that she embedded that in everything and helps us to see that.
Thank you, Joe. And in a way, I feel it's all kind of our job to repeat each other and to repeat Joanna and to evolve on it and spin and weave with it. That's what we're all doing here. Thank you for the beautiful ways you've done so. I'll just add that I find that to be true as well. What you said, Joe, that she cuts through that and is sort of like anything that we could bring up, she would say, "Oh yeah, look, there's more proof of our interbeing." It's like, "Oh, your grief? Yep, that proves. Look, that demonstrates for us the fact that we can feel pain on behalf of someone other than ourselves. Or your passion for justice, your determination to do something, yet more evidence of our interbeing, and what a gift that is that runs through her writing and her teaching." So I don't believe we have more questions at the moment from the audience. So that gives me time to invite you each to give a few closing words if you like. We had the prompt of, in 3 words, how is Joanna Macy's legacy living through you? But since we have a few minutes, you're not limited to 3 words. If you want to take a minute, any closing reflections that are on your mind, we'd love to hear a little more from each of you. I can let you select when you'd like to go this time. We don't have to go in the same order.
This is my chance to
Jump in,
start.
yes.
Yay!
First in line.
Well, there were 3 words that came to my mind, and that is light, love, and laughter. Just because I like the 3 L's, but for me, she shone a light through the veils that she knew how to deeply love, and always with laughter, always with joy. never with she was never looked like she was sucking on lemons. She was always just throwing flowers at our feet. So light, love, and laughter.
Thank you, Joe. Beautiful. Judith, yes.
There we go. For me, the three words are culture, community, and love, because I believe that the real work lies in community. That's where the hard work is we actually don't know how to get along with each other. Now, when we come face to face with it, I mean, we can march in the millions on the streets, but if we turned around and talked to each other, how would that go? If we tried to make decisions together, how would that go? On what basis do we make decisions? So I think for me, Joanna's work weaves into the recreation of culture that will help us find our place in the natural world, help us find true love, real love in community. So that's where her work is invaluable to me. And that's where I find courage and strength in my own way. We all do it in our own way, but love is the answer.
Thanks, Judith.
I can follow up on that because the three words that I was going to share is I love us. And really loving my partner, who does a lot of work around death and grief, turned me on to the work of a grief worker named Stephen Jenkinson, who says that the mark of a good death is that it is a village making event. And I am just so deeply aware of how many beautiful circles and communities and rituals and celebrations that I've been a part of honoring Joanna's transition since she's passed away, and how much community she continues to weave even after her passing. And I love that I get to be a part of this circle today. I love that I get to be a resident of Canticle Farms. I love that I get to be a part of the Work That Reconnects, and just all of these communities that ensure that Joanna's legacy continues to live on through us, and that we continue to make village, and to make sure that her death is a beautiful death and a good death. So yeah, I love the work that we're all doing together and the conversations that we've had today, and I love our presence and I love us. So thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you, Kazu. I love that. I love us. Yes, Molly.
Well, my three words, I didn't think about them ahead of time, so I came up with them just now. Embodied love and intelligence. And intelligence is an important word for me with a capital I, because I see intelligence in the roots of trees communicating with each other. That's intelligence. So I'm not just talking about human intellectual intelligence. Interesting. Intellectual is part of intelligence, but anyway, so embodied love and intelligence, because really, when she was writing Widening Circles, she had an original publisher who was, and her editor there was saying, too much life of the mind, too much life of the mind. Literally told her that. And then she changed publishers and went to a New Society Press that appreciated the life of the mind. So the life of the mind, but like I said, embodied life of the mind and heart. Life of the mind and heart, embodied. All three.
Thank you, Molly. And Stephanie?
Well, I think my words would have to be, I am listening. Honestly, I'm still grieving. I'm glad to be part of this circle. I've had different kinds of rounds of grieving across all this time. It's really kept changing shape, I'm sure, as for many of you. But almost always, I just feel Joanna very nearby, like as Jack Kornfield said in one of these, on my shoulder. just saying, do the work, take refuge in doing the work. And so I don't really feel she's very far away, even though I just miss her terribly. So I think I leave it at I'm listening.
Thank you, Stephanie. Did you want to add something, Judith?
I just want to briefly say that Joanna's life and legacy will be celebrated on Gabriola Island here by a group of people who have organized to do that, and that's in a couple of weeks' time. So Joanna's work lives on and on and on. I just want to say that.
Thank you. I feel Joanna close as well. I wasn't necessarily going to say this out loud to you today, but I feel suddenly moved to tell you all that this morning, as I had to be on here at 7:40 a.m. my time. So this is on the early side for being fully alert to talk to all of you. And I was walking down the hall, getting ready to heat up some tea, and I smelled Earl Grey tea, which I don't typically drink, but Joanna did. And I really only ever had it at her house. And I have a box of it here because I thought, oh, I drank that with Joanna, but I just don't care for it that much. But I was walking down the hall this morning getting ready for this, and I smelled it in the air, and I felt that that presence and that invitation. So I've been sipping my Earl Grey tea with all of you and Joanna this morning. And as Kazu described spirituality, I feel this has been a spiritual gathering here that has filled me with love and awe to be with all of you and to celebrate and honor Joanna together and to be part of that continuation of her work. So my gratitude to you, and I will mention one more time, prompted by Joe, that we are hoping to share Widening Circles, Joanna's story, her words. If you haven't read it, it's just amazing. It's amazing to hear her story from childhood. She went on to live 26 more years after publishing this memoir, so it's not the whole story, but the adventures and the insights, and as Molly was saying, the life of the mind. I mean, the way that she weaves the story of her her love of people and the world with the life of her ideas, the history of ideas with world events, with personal life. It's just why we all love her so much. So if you are moved, I've heard people ask, is there an audiobook of Widening Circles? So I know the wish is out there. So many people read by listening right now. So if you want to help us bring that out, there's the link again. Thank you, Joe, to donate toward the audiobook. Stephanie, yeah.
Oh, I just hope you'll accept a postscript to this. When we worked on the 30th anniversary edition of World is Lover, World is Self, we wanted to make sure that people knew she did have another 26 years of life beyond Widening Circles. So if you don't have the third edition and you get it, you will then find a timeline of her life events from 2000, for her whole life, but including after 2000. So that gives a more complete picture. And congratulations on this project. I really hope it can go very successfully.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you for that good wish, and thank you to all of you who've already donated. That link is there, and hopefully you'll be able to listen to it soon. We do have discount codes from the publishers again for several of Joanna's books. I think I saw some discussion in the chat that maybe those aren't all working, so I won't necessarily post them again right now, but we'll make sure that everyone receives those. So any books of Joanna's you don't have, or any friends of yours who don't have Joanna's books, Parallax and New Society and Shambhala are generously offering those discounts. And I hope we can also share links to the wonderful books by each of the authors who's here with us today. You've all contributed beautiful works to the world as well that I deeply appreciate. So thank you all again, Molly, Judith, Kazu, Stephanie, and Joe, last but never least. And thank you to Shai and Joe for hosting. I'll pass it back over to Shayantini now.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Leilani. That was beautiful. And thank you so much to our panelists and our lovely audience Thank you for joining us today for this event, which was a collaboration between us and the 3 publication houses. To learn more about the network, you can visit our website. If you are not yet a community member or a facilitator member with us, please visit the following link, which is going to be posted, and you can visit that link for more information. We would love your feedback on today's event, and it would really help us make all of our offerings even more better. There's a link for that as well. And this is an anonymous form. So if you want us to connect with you, please add your name and your email address so that we can get in touch with you. And we would also encourage you to join us for our next webinar program event, which is going to be a book launch of Coming Together in the Great Turning. Woo-hoo! On November 22nd. There's a link to that in the chat as well. And we have already started populating our calendar for next year's events. You can stay tuned for further events and sign up for our mailing list. We send out newsletters very frequently, and you can get in touch with us for anything. So with that, we will close today's recording. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you.